Hello everybody, welcome back to another ranking video, and the third event for Mario's March Madness. And today I'll be going over Mario FNF Port version 2. I'm sure everyone is excited for me to talk about this mod, right? Right? In all seriousness, you all should have seen this one coming a mile away. For one, this was a mod that people requested me to do back before I even started making these videos. 2, if you recall from that one poll I made regarding the Mario Horror Brew mods, this was the only one I had yet to talk about. And 3, this is one of the big 4 Mario Creepypasta mods of this community. Or, at least back when version 1 came out. Well anyway, you might be wondering what my thoughts are on Mario FNF Port. Well, I was not a fan of version 1. I found a lot of the songs to be either boring, underwhelming, or just straight up bad. I just never really understood the hype for it back then, so obviously it was the weakest of the 4 Mario horror mods for me. Then version 2, well, it was cancelled, but the build for it was released, and I found myself enjoying it. Granted, I still think it has the worst OST of the 4 mods, but it was still a vast improvement over the original. Of the 25 songs in the canned build, I like 13 of them, so basically half of the entire soundtrack. And make no mistake, the tracks I do like are good, as I did find a lot of enjoyment from them. But then you have the ones that I don't like. You see, unlike some songs and stuff like Infernal Bout or Classified, where nearly every song has its good moments and plenty of positives to which I can see why someone would say they're all good, FNF Port has a lot of tracks that I find to have way too many issues that make it incredibly hard to consider them as being at least decent or enjoyable. In fact, I find the worst of this mod's OST to easily be some of, if not the weakest songs I've ranked for this channel, and it will probably remain that way even when going over other mods after this one. So yeah, this video is going to be very interesting, for a couple of reasons. 1, this video is going to be a lot longer than my last 3, that is for certain. 2, this ranking is probably not going to be as positive as the other videos have been, at least not for a good while. 3rd, the polls. Not gonna lie, doing these polls for FNF Port have been nothing but a roller coaster of emotions for me. Like, there were times when I felt like crashing out just from seeing the results of some of these, due to how shocked I was from realizing just how off my predictions were. And that leads me to my 4th reason. There are going to be a lot of different kind of takes in this video. Some cold, some mild, some hot. Either way, I know there's going to be at least one person that will be pissed off during each of these entries. Also, just to clarify something, I will only be talking about the songs in the canned build. Nothing from version 1, nothing that was meant for version 2 that was either scrapped or wasn't able to make it into the mod before it was cancelled. Just the 25 songs that can be found and played in the current build. Nothing more, nothing less. So, with all my ramblings out of the way, it's time for the ranking to commence. Starting with the absolute worst this mod has to offer. And oh boy, we're off to a very rough start.
You like that? Huh? You like that? You just tune this out, don't you? Well, tune this out!
Before we begin this list, I want to do a little reflection, if you guys don't mind. Over the last 3 rankings, there have been several types of songs that I've talked about. We've had climactic songs, songs that ooze of a certain tone or theme, songs that are commonly popular in this community, songs that I may not like but everyone else likes, or vice versa, songs that many people may find overrated but I may find underrated, or the other way around. We've also talked about long songs, short songs, meme songs, songs filled with references, and songs with lyrics. We've also talked about songs that I found to be lackluster, where they had issues that kept me from thinking them to be considered good, as well as songs that were just downright awful. But despite all of that, there is one type of song I have yet to talk about. Crappy joke songs. For those that don't know what these are, the shtick of these tracks is that they are meant to be bad for the sake of the joke. Whether it's because of awful vocals, piss-poor melodies, empty instrumentals, or all of the above, they are purposely made to be terrible, and that's what the humor solely consists of. Now, these tracks are obviously considered to be the worst of any mod soundtrack. Under no circumstances are they made with the intention of being good. But the interesting thing with me when it comes to these tracks is, I don't normally find them to be nearly as bad as everyone says they are. Now, I'm not going to try and defend these songs or perpetuate any ideas that they can be good. At the end of the day, these tracks are still hot garbage, but that doesn't mean they're guaranteed to be at the bottom spot of my list anytime they're featured in a mod, and that also doesn't mean they will normally be put in some place like a G tier in these rankings. I don't think these songs deserve to be placed in any spot below F tier, because as bad as they are, they don't have that same level of repulsiveness for me to consider them to be the absolute worst of the worst. A G tier song, in my opinion, is the most irredeemable piece of music, in a place filled with already irredeemable tracks. In other words, the embodiment of the bottom of the barrel. Not only that, but more often than not, I do get some level of enjoyment from crappy joke songs. Whether I get something out of it ironically, like a small chuckle at the thought of how stupid it is, or there's something that I do unironically enjoy about it, like an instrumental or a slightly catchy melody. The only time I would consider these types of songs to be abysmal is when there is nothing for me to latch onto, because at that point, the track is just a waste of time for me. At the end of the day, while these songs are bad, you know what you're getting yourself into when you first encounter these tracks. And it's because of that, the reason why I don't find them as egregious as, say, an actual serious song that unintentionally ended up being terrible due to having poor elements in it. That being said, the last place spot of Mario FNF Port is something else entirely. This song's level of atrociousness went above and beyond the realm of bad, to a point that I never imagined could be possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you not only the worst song in Mario FNF Port V2, not only my first G tier for these videos, but what is easily one of, if not the worst FNF song I've ever listened to. I give you Wega Blast. Where do I even begin with this one? This track is genuinely awful, even in terms of crappy joke songs. Matter of fact, calling this a crappy joke song would be a massive understatement. But why is this track as bad as I'm making it out to be? Well, to start, this isn't your typical bad joke track, where it has nothing melodies and an uninspired instrumental. Nope, this is instead a cover. Throughout the entire song, BF is singing Intasma's theme from Mario & Luigi Dream Team. Now, on paper, that doesn't sound too bad. The original song is a great battle theme and is easily one of the best tracks in not only the Mario & Luigi games, but in the entire Mario series as a whole. Except there's two problems. First off, BF sings a low-effort, slow-down cover of the theme, making it obviously hit nowhere near as hard as the original track. Second, this isn't just a cover, it is a remixed cover. The instrumental here is an orchestral rendition of the original song, which, again, sounds like it could have been good if it didn't suck out all the charm and energy the official song had. Also, I suppose I should now talk about the giant Luigi in the room. Yeah, Wega never once sings during this song. You know what he does instead? He just does the Wega jump scare at random intervals throughout the track. Does that sound miserable to you? That's because it is. And to make it somehow even worse, at one point in the song, Wega will play the jump scare sound repeatedly to match up with the main melody of the song, but he stops midway through the main motif, creating this obnoxiously jarring whiplash, which adds another layer of dissatisfaction the track gives off. In other words, it can't even commit to the joke properly. So, if you can't already tell, Wega Blast does all the things that could make me utterly despise a bad joke song, thus making it a complete and utter waste of time. But Geigen, you're probably saying, it makes sense as to why you would put this song as the worst of the mod, as well as putting it in G tier, but the worst ever FNF song? Surely you're being a bit too harsh for a song that's purposely trying to be bad. And you know what? Under different circumstances, you would be right. Except there is one tiny detail I forgot to mention about Wega Blast. It's 4 minutes! In what universe is it okay to give a song like this long of a runtime? This makes Wega Blast the 7th longest track in the mod! And you wanna know something else? The original Intasma theme is only 1 minute and 20 seconds! You wanna know how they made it so that Wega Blast could be 3 times longer? They play the theme once, then play the entire thing again, and then play the first half of it for a 3rd time! This track is a genuine insult to people's time, and there is nothing you could tell me that would make me believe otherwise. It actively ruins any good aspect the song could have had. It doesn't even know how to properly deliver its joke, and whatever humor that can be had here dies way before the song is even halfway finished. All in all, Week of Blast is miserable. It is terrible. It is a pathetic attempt at any semblance of comedy, and I never, ever want to have to talk about this abomination again.
Alright, Evie, you pick what deal?
Let me tell you a story. While I didn't like any of the songs from version 1 of this mod, there were a few songs that I felt had potential to be good with a proper rework. One of those tracks was Apparitionist. To keep it short, I thought the biggest problem with the song was the spam melodies. I'm not too big on spam, let alone ones that have zero flow or structure, as it just makes the track sound like it vomited a bunch of notes and called it a day. Aside from that, the other aspects about this song had some promise to them. The chromatic for the Wario apparition was solid, and it worked well with the spammy parts of the track. And this instrumental was amazing. It of course had a good use of the N64 sound font, but it also incorporated this really nice sounding choir, and it overall sounded like something that would fit Wario and its themes from the official games, which no other Wario apparition song really capitalized on. So yeah, I had always believed that if the song either got rid of or improved upon those spam sections, then I probably would end up liking it. So when the canned build of version 2 was released, I was really looking forward to seeing what they did with the remake for Apparitionist, only to find out that all that potential the song had was completely thrown out the window. I have never seen a remake butcher a song as badly as this, and this is for a track I didn't even like to begin with. Here, let me just go through all my issues I have with this remaster, starting with the big critique I had with the original song, the melodies. Remember when I said that a way to improve upon Apparitionist was to change up the melodies? Well, guess what? Practically nothing about the singing parts changed. The only difference between the ones in version 1 and those in version 2 is that Wario now sings an extra note or two whenever he acts as the backing chorus for BF. That is literally it. You know what? It probably wouldn't have been so bad since I was still able to appreciate the other aspects of the song back when version 1 released. Well, guess what did get changed for the worst in version 2? Wario's chromatic now has this filter on it to convey how he's an apparition, and it does not work with the song at all. The ghostly effect is way too echoey, which gives all the regular melodies zero impact, and it causes all the spam sections to just sound like noise. And then there's the instrumental. First off, instead of having the N64 sound font create this tone that mimics the style of official Wario themes, the song now uses it to create the spooky and menacing tone, something that was already done for literally every other Wario apparition song. Look, I don't like making critiques that involve me saying, oh, this song does something similar to what another song does, because it's lazy and unfair, but how are you going to have a unique approach to the song's instrumental in the first version, but then revert back to doing a very standard interpretation during the remake? And then there's my second issue. Remember that really cool choir that was used in version 1? Yeah, that no longer gets used as much in this version. And, to add insult to injury, the song now uses amen breaks. It's like a bad joke. As if the track is trying its hardest to make me hate it. And honestly, it's kind of working. Oh, and before people start saying something in the comments, no, I didn't place this song as low as I did because of how much it ruined the original song. In fact, all the stuff I mentioned about version 1 had 0 factors on the ranking of version 2. I do think this track is that bad, as it has melodies that are a complete and utter mess, a chromatic that simply doesn't work, and it includes instruments I utterly despise. The stuff about version 2 butchering version 1 is just a bonus thing I wanted to talk about, because it pisses me off!
Victim 2. Michael George seemed to have been violently ripped out. Victim found with head detached from torso, with unidentified fingerprints all over a microphone the victim seemed to be holding.
Find Me frustrates me to no end. Well, technically all of these songs I've talked about so far have frustrated me to no end, but Find Me annoys me in a very specific way because of how close the song was to actually being good. For starters, this section with the message block is great. I love the slow tempo of the song, the melodies have me swaying a bit from side to side, the instrumental is amazing and has a fantastic build-up, and Victim 1's vocals sound incredible here, working well with the mysterious and ominous tone the track is clearly going for. Unfortunately, it kinda goes downhill once Victim 1 reveals herself. Positives first, I like the melodies a lot during this part. I normally dislike it when songs constantly switch between two different tempos without having a smooth transition, but Find Me is one of a few exceptions to this. I'm able to just sway from side to side during the slower parts of this song, and then immediately bop my head to the more catchy, intense moments without it feeling like I'm getting whiplash from the change in speed. And then you have the instrumental, which is fantastic. There is so much variety and I love it. You have choirs, orchestral and rock-like instruments, and even a bit of synth in here, and all of them complement each other incredibly well. The violins and xylophone are definitely a huge highlight for me. If there's one thing I can give FNF Port, it's that it has some really good instrumentals. Unfortunately, this song does use amen breaks, but it's not used for a huge portion of the track, so it could have been worse, I guess. Anyway, with all that being said, what kills this song for me is Victim 1's chromatic. Why is it so quiet? Not only does it give the melody zero force, which, in case you haven't realized it yet, is a pretty big deal breaker for me, but it also makes no sense. Like, the vocals that were used for the victim during the message block section were perfect. What was the point of not only changing them, but making them more quiet when she actually does show up? I swear, it's like the composers of this mod wanted people to not enjoy these songs. Also, I have to say something about the length. Why is it 3 minutes and 40 seconds? Look, as iconic as the Victim 1 horror brew is, I don't think it warrants this long of a runtime. It just makes some parts of the song feel more dragged out. Also, I don't really care about the key change here. I'm not a fan of how it sounds, and it adds to that feeling of the track unnecessarily padding out its length. At the end of the day, this song leaves me feeling bored and uninterested due to its core problem, and even then, those smaller issues just add more salt to the wound. Honestly, Find Me is a prime example as to why I find chromatics to be a really important factor for FNF songs. The quality of a set of vocals can easily make or break a track for me, and unfortunately for this one, it's the latter.
What? Did you think that was it? No, of course not. That was just a tutorial.
I'll be honest, I was debating if I should include the tutorial on this list, and my hesitance definitely didn't get resolved after ranking it, that's for sure. I'll give the song this, I like the first 25 seconds. It's really catchy, and it made me think the track was going to go in a different direction from the one it ended up going. And then the tempo and key change happened. Remember when I said I'm not a fan of abrupt tempo changes? Yeah, this song is a prime example of it being done poorly. Then there's the part when Mario, or technically MX but in his false hero form, begins to sing. His chromatic is good, but there's a song that I'll talk about much later on this list that utilizes it a lot better. I don't like the singing parts in this portion. The main melody has this super awkward break in the middle of the motif that makes it feel incomplete due to how spaced out it is, and it just rubs me the wrong way. Honestly, this track is a very nothing song, but it also has a bunch of my pet peeves that do a good job at irritating me. And because of that, it goes into the F tier. No questions asked. Moving on.
Summer, autumn, winter, and disco!
Oh boy, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. Yeah, disco is simply not my cup of tea. And even if I did like it, I don't feel like it really deserves to rank that high. Hell, like the tutorial, I was conflicted on whether or not I should include this song. It is essentially a glorified instrumental. It's like if I decided to include the Mania chart songs for when I rank the tracks for Monster of Monsters, whenever that video would come out. At least Disco is a completely original song, and admittedly a good one at that. The melodies are great, and I like the references to other tracks from this mod, as most of them are some of my favorites from this OST. The problem is, if I wanted to listen to a song like this in my own free time, I would just play the instrumental of some other song in this mod that I would enjoy more. Or better yet, just listen to a non-FNF video game theme. Part of why I constantly check out FNF mods and want to rank their respective OSTs is to hear stuff that incorporate unique chromatics into their tracks. So when you're missing that core aspect, I'm not really going to feel invested or interested. And, I should clarify this, no. Disco isn't ranked this low solely because, oh, it doesn't have chromatics, or, oh, it's just an instrumental with a chart. These songs are ranked by how much I enjoy them, and unfortunately, this is a type of song I simply don't care for. Make no mistake, this is miles better than any of the prior entries on this list, but I can't force myself to click with a track that is a certain style that I have no interest in. If you happen to like Disco, and or this is one of your favorites from the mod, I am sorry for ranking it this low, but at least I can understand why you may enjoy it, and I can fully respect you for being able to appreciate something I simply cannot.
Yo soy Reggie, mamma mia, Reggie.exe, soy amigo de Mario Mande.
You know, if I had a nickname for these tiers, D tier would definitely be called Hot Take Hell, because practically every single song that ended up here has a good number of fans. Meanwhile, I am not one of them, and even in terms of songs that I don't like, I feel that your dear brother and the next two entries have their fair share of problems that keep me from thinking they're objectively decent, let alone good. I'll keep it simple, the biggest issue I have with this song in particular is the melodies. Credit to where credit is due, everything about the main chorus is phenomenal. It's incredibly catchy, and both Mr. L's chromatic and the super intense and eerie instrumental give it the right amount of impact for it to really hit hard and be an absolute banger. However, outside of the main motif, none of the other singing parts are good. Whenever the song isn't focusing on that one specific melody, it becomes super bare bones and uninteresting, with lots of pauses, basic rhythms, and an empty instrumental. It's like the music equivalent of maxing out your character's attack stat in an RPG, while the other ones like defense and health are just left high and dry. And again, the main motif is great, but it's not meant to carry the whole song. I don't think I'm asking too much when I say that I would like to enjoy some variety in the track. Also, I do have to mention something about Mr. L's chromatic. It's definitely a very raspy type of vocals, and it's clear they are not meant for certain rhythms, such as really fast melodies with lots of notes. Thankfully, this is more of a critique of some other songs featuring TwoLake.exe, and not really an issue here, except for one specific turn where GF has this big pop-off and the man in green tries to follow suit, but he sounds absolutely horrendous, especially because he ends up becoming off-tune. Also, speaking of whom, I do like GF's chromatic. It's used in a lot of songs in this mod, and she sounds incredible in all of them. It's easily one of my favorite set of vocals for Girlfriend. One last thing about this song, I don't really care for the key changes. Since key changes are meant to be more of the same stuff that was played earlier in this track, it means listening to the main melody for yet another time, and at this point I'm just tired of hearing it. Also, the track just abruptly ends after the motif is played, and that really annoys me. Look, if there's one thing you'll realize about me, it's that I absolutely despise it when songs end abruptly. Considering how the ending of a track is meant to act as a payoff to the song as a whole, if the final note of the piece, you know, the thing the song leaves you off with, ends in an abrupt fashion, it hinders the impact of the entire ending, thus creating this dissatisfaction with the overall track. So yeah, if I do find an issue with the closing melody of a song, even if it's just the last note, I will be critical of it, because it is one of, if not the most important part of a piece of music.
I have a question. For God. Why?
I was quite surprised to see that people actually like Melancholy. I knew it had its fans, but I definitely underestimated the sheer size of them. Too bad I personally don't care for this one. Okay, I do have some positives for it. I like some of the melodies in this song, and they all flow super nicely into each other. It is another case where I do find myself swaying side to side to a couple of these singing parts. I also like the I Got No Time reference. Its inclusion makes zero sense, but at least it still sounds good. I also really enjoy the instrumental. I love how well it transitions from being really calm and somber with that beautiful piano to being more emotional when it incorporates that rock guitar. It really does help convey the sad tone the track is trying to go for. It is unfortunate though that Mario's chromatic doesn't bother to carry that same feeling. I'll go over this more when I talk about a certain song in my Mario's Madness ranking, but I feel like a song such as this needs to have the vocals be able to go high enough to help express the pain and sadness the character is feeling. The melodies and instrumental of Melancholy do have enough drama to them to help enforce this emotional, almost hopeless feel to the track, but Mario's voice just doesn't reach those same heights. It gets close, but not close enough, and sadly, that makes the song fall flat for me.
Oh my God, MX's theme is straight garbanzo!
Spoiler alert for later entries on this list, but I did find the main week of FNF Port 2 overall be quite good. Sure, it did take some time to like some of the songs, but when all was said and done, I ended up liking 3 of the 4 tracks from MX's week. Sadly, Destroy the World was not one of those songs. If there was one way to describe this one, it's that it feels artificial. You see, one type of critique that I don't like to give FNF songs is that, oh, it just sounds like a generic track from a certain music genre. I feel that's a super unfair criticism, because given just how big the FNF community is, there is bound to be some overlap between certain songs and their styles, and there's nothing that can be done to really remedy that. That being said, Destroy the World is a big exception to this. This whole song really does feel like it's just here to check off a bunch of boxes. It's as if the devs were like, oh, we need a typical big finale song to end off MX's week. Make sure it has a bunch of fast melodies with lots of notes, and also that the instrumental sounds really dramatic. That is honestly the best way to describe this track, because it's not like it has any sort of identity outside of that. Unlike any other song in this mod that features MX, this one doesn't really do the character justice or even remotely try to have it correlate with him. And even when ignoring this issue, this track still doesn't get any better. The melodies and instrumental are serviceable, I guess, but there's no real moment where I find them noteworthy. And while I do like MX's chromatic in this mod, it doesn't work well in this song. The raspiness of his vocals combined with the faster rhythms causes all of the notes to slur and blend together, which ultimately makes all of his singing parts just sound like noise. And to top it all off, there's this obnoxiously long pause near the end of the song that lasts for nearly 40 seconds before the track goes back to playing more of the same stuff from before. Not only does it drag the whole thing out to nearly 4 minutes, it really does make the song come full circle with the idea that it's just trying to be as dramatic and climactic as possible, while still lacking all the substance it needs for it to execute that tone well. Look, I know there's some people that like Destroy the World, and more power to you. But the moment I heard this song, I knew I wasn't going to like it, and this ranking just further cemented those initial thoughts. It's a standard track at best, but standard should not be the end goal for something that's meant to be the final song for MX, let alone when he's being depicted as the main opponent for this mod. Okay, now we're finally getting to the songs that I don't personally like, but I can see reasons why other people may enjoy them, starting with Obey. When I first checked this mod out, I actually did think I was going to end up saving this one to my favorites. Unfortunately, the more I listened to it, the more it fell out of favor for me. Starting with the chromatics, I do like both set of vocals. Luigi sounds absolutely perfect here, not only because his voice sounds near identical to his iconic Obey Luigi Destroy Mario line, but it has this imposing feel to it, which fits musically with his towering stature in the song. Mario does tend to sound a bit monotone at times, but whenever the song picks up an energy, it then becomes really good. I know there are some people that wanted Luigi to have sung as well, and I do agree that a 1v2 for the song would be cool, and might even fix my biggest issue with the track, but what we have right now still isn't too bad, all things considered. The instrumental is all around solid, and while I do wish it leaned into having a more climactic tone, to replicate how this is meant to be some sort of big fight like in its source material, the instruments still carry a boss battle feel that is very much enjoyable. But the best part about this song is the melodies. A lot of the motifs are extremely catchy and prompt me to either bop my head back and forth or to sway from side to side. That one pop-off Luigi has when he becomes a floating head along with that duet near the end of the song are easily my two favorite parts of the track. Honestly, the only reason I don't like Obey is because it's a bit too long. After that glorious pop-off that occurs in the middle of the song, which is easily when the track's energy is at its highest, several motifs from previous turns just get reused, killing all momentum that it had. This is where I say that the song should have been a 1v2, because that way it would justify the 4-minute runtime. Again, I love the duet that plays for the song's final turn, but at that point the damage is already done. Also, the track doesn't necessarily end there, as it has this really long and awkward fade out with the instrumental, and the way it's executed makes it sound like the song was going to continue on afterwards, but doesn't, so this whole closer just feels really jarring to me. This is another case of a song fumbling the bag incredibly hard for me, which is a real shame because if Obey didn't feel the need to drag itself out like this, I would have easily loved this one. If there was one word to describe falling apart, it would be fine. Like Obey, this was another song that turned more and more sour with every new listen I gave it. I don't know, everything about this song just feels incredibly standard. There isn't anything that makes it bad, but there's not really anything that makes it good either. Plumber's Chromatic is serviceable. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not an interesting set of vocals. The song's structure is basically defined by two parts, a calm section and a more serious, energetic portion. The calm part of the song is probably the section I like the most. I found some of the melodies and instruments to be extremely catchy, especially because some of them remind me of the main theme from Game Theory, which is an absolute banger of a song. Then you have the more intense moment of the track. Look, I'm gonna be honest, this portion of the song is like Destroy the World, where it's trying to convey a certain tone, but lacks the substance to really enforce that direction. I do enjoy the faster tempo and the increase in energy during this part, but that's about it. Anyway, once those two parts of the song are finished, the track just repeats those same portions again, where each section is extended a bit, but in reality, it's just more of the same stuff. Yeah, Falling Apart just becomes incredibly stale for me, where I'm just really bored with it by the second go around. If the song wasn't so one note and actually tried to have some variety, I probably would have liked this one. But alas, its flaws ended up balancing out its pros, therefore making it the epitome of mid.
Alright, Evie, you pick! Psych type of a Luigi time!
Remember in my Monday Night Massacre ranking during the Blinked entry when I mentioned how much I enjoy it when mods use more obscure characters for their songs? Yeah, Match Point is another really cool instance of this. Sure, I may not like the song, but I can't deny its positives. For one, Waltz's chromatic is interesting. It definitely fits a character like Waluigi, but there is a bit of raspiness to it, similar to MX's or Mr. L's vocals, but in my opinion, he lacks that power behind his voice that the other two horror brews have. But more on that later. I love the rock-style instrumental for the song. It's not super intense and menacing, rather it's full of energy and has this epic feel to it that I absolutely enjoy. The melodies are incredibly bouncy and are almost addicting to listen to. But in my opinion, the best part about this track is during that moment when the camera pans down from the top of the stadium to the two characters. That amazing piano that pops off without a care combined with that beautiful choir harmonizing in the background in tangent with the motifs just creates this absolute masterpiece that I can't help but bang my head to. It is quite possibly my favorite section from this whole mod. Unfortunately, the rest of the track after this is what kills the song for me. Don't get me wrong, both the melodies and the instrumental are fantastic during this part, but Walks becomes really quiet and difficult to listen to, and that's due to his scratchy vocals not being strong enough to give this portion the oomph it so desperately needs. And given how this ending is clearly trying to be the most intense section of the song, it ultimately leads to it being a very unsatisfying way to wrap up the track. I kid you not, had Walks sounded a little louder here, this would have easily been one of the top songs in the mod for me. Oh boy, I know I'm going to upset a lot of people with this entry. Look, I can understand why a lot of people think Menticide is really good, but unfortunately I have quite a few issues with the track myself. One of the bigger problems I have with the song is similar to one of my main grievances with Falling Apart, being that it basically consists of being slow at first, then faster and more intense, and then the cycle repeats once more. Starting with the first slow portion, I really like the main melody. It is an absolute headbanger that also works as a great way to build up hype for the song, and Mr. Virtual's chromatic gives it so much power and force behind it. I also dig the instrumental taking a heavy metal approach. It's a style that surprisingly works well with this character. Then comes the part where the song gets faster as the stage begins to fall. This is easily my favorite moment of the song. There's just so much energy that courses through the track at this point, and the faster tempo makes the melodies all the more wonderful to listen to. Unfortunately, it only lasts for a single turn before immediately going back to the slow section of the song. I feel that the faster part should have been longer, so that way the track can have a chance to smoothly wind down and dial back all that energy it was building up. This second slow section is fine, it's just more of the same stuff from the first one. There is a moment in this part where it tries to be suspenseful by going all quiet, which ends up being both good and bad. The instrumental during that segment sounds amazing, with it mostly consisting of this organ that takes center stage while a choir chants in the background. But the singing parts themselves are super spaced out and they don't flow well into each other, which leads to it having too much emptiness in it. The second pop-off then happens, which ends up being worse than the first one. Not only does it last for one turn again before going back to the main motif of the slow section one more time, but there's this key change that happens in the middle of said turn, and I really don't like it. All in all, while I do see the appeal for Menticide, it's definitely far from perfect, and I feel there are plenty of things holding it back that keep me from liking it.
Ain't nobody scared of MX, bruh. Huh? No! 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 No!
Okay, now we are finally onto the songs that I like from this mod, starting with Terrifying. Of the 3 songs that I liked from the main week, this was the one that took the longest time for me to warm up to. I think the biggest reason as to why is because this one doesn't really do much to try and stand out compared to the other songs in this OST. Despite that, I think the reason I still like this track is because of the way it executes the things it does have. For starters, I love the melodies. They're nothing crazy, but I still find them super addicting and I can't help but bounce my head to them. MX's chromatic is quite good here as well. It's not my favorite set of vocals for him, especially due to how scratchy they can get at times, but unlike Destroy the World, it definitely works really well with the song's specific rhythms and note patterns. The instrumental is serviceable, but it also has a bunch of things that I do like about it, such as the combination of a rock guitar and lower brass instruments, and I can't help but mention those glorious sounding choir bells. I also found this 8-bit section to be quite enjoyable. Interestingly enough, it gives MX the chromatic that was used for him back in the original FNF port. And while I hate those vocals given how they were utilized in the songs for version 1, they surprisingly sound incredibly good here. So yeah, while I do think there are many other songs that are better than this one, Terrifying still deserves plenty of credit and respect, because it is still absolutely fun to listen to regardless.
Well, now you're gonna get it, motherfucker! That's right! You and me! Right now!
Right Now is probably the most underrated song of this mod. I'm sorry, but I can't help but just adore this one. Starting with the weakest aspect of the song, Troll Slayer Mario's chromatic is fine. Yeah, it is the same chromatic used for Mario in Melancholy, but there's a lot more liveliness in the vocals here than in that song, which in turn makes the singing parts resonate a lot more. Speaking of which, I love the melodies here. The main motif is way too addicting for me, always prompting me to either bang my head to the beat of the track or to sway from side to side. The instrumental just further pushes my enjoyment for this song. It's already another case of a really good use of a rock instrumental, but it also incorporates this really nice sounding bass and piano, and the way that electric guitar plays the main motif in the background is such an earworm, and it further cements the catchiness the track has. And that key change at the end just takes everything I love about the song and cranks it up to the next level, making it an awesome closure for the track. So say what you will about this one, I honestly don't care. It may not do much, but what it does do puts a huge smile on my face. Oh boy, everyone get your popcorn because we are in for a long one now. Triple Appear Good. First off, I want to say I don't like the original Triple Appear. MX's old chromatic was terrible in that song, it was extremely repetitive, that section with BF and GF completely killed the pacing and tone of the track, and overall I felt it was just incredibly overrated. So yeah, I do think the one in version 2 is a lot better, but regardless, this is a very weird song. Well, since this is a longer track with several opponents, I'll go over it section by section. Starting with MX, this whole part is just fantastic. The new chromatic allows him to sound really good here, and it makes the melodies actually distinguishable and enjoyable to listen to. Speaking of which, one thing I will give the original Triple Appear some credit for was its main motifs. They were quite good, but unfortunately they were just executed in the worst way possible. Thankfully, most of those melodies are carried over into here, and they honestly sound way better than ever before. The instrumental is also another big change that I really enjoy. It allows the track to sound a lot more climactic and have a finality to it, which makes perfect sense considering how this was meant to be the good ending song for this mod. So yeah, this is a fantastic opening to the track. But then Lord X shows up, where he only sings for one turn during the beginning section of the song. Okay, don't get me wrong, the melody for this turn is great, and I do like Lord X's chromatic, but it's kind of odd how he shows up this early into the track only for him to barely do anything during this beginning phase. And then we move on to Mr. L's section, and this is where my problems with the song start to arise. First off, I will admit the Mr. L segment in the first Triple Appear was the one part of the original song that I actually did enjoy, and unfortunately, this portion had probably the most amount of changes in Triple Appear Good. Don't get me wrong, it's still a solid enough part, but it definitely doesn't hit as hard as it used to. The beginning turn is a great opener to the fight between TooLate.exe and GF, having an excellent menacing tone with amazing choir bells to back it up, and the singing parts aren't bad either. But then we get to the main motif of this section. The instrumental is still good, and the melodies are quite catchy, and I like how both things push this more epic, almost heroic and hopeful tone, further reinforcing that this is meant to be the good ending of the mod's story. My problem comes from the chromatics. There are times when Mr. L just doesn't sound good. I can't tell if it's because these vocals for him don't work with the song's melodies, or he's simply off tune at times. But either way, most of his turns end up sounding pretty rough. And then there's GF. For some reason, instead of using her regular chromatic that the mod gave her, the song gives her Millie's vocals from the Massacre song in Mistful Crimson Morning. And what makes this even more bizarre is, Millie is in this mod, but even she uses the regular GF chromatic in her song. So why on earth is this the voice they decide to specifically use for Triple Appear Good? Don't get me wrong, GF still sounds great, it's just jarring when looking at this mod as a whole. Then comes the BF and GF part, which sadly was never finished visually. First off, yes, this section is a vast improvement over the original. The way it transitions from the previous segment with Mr. L is super smooth, and it allows the energy of the track to die down properly. The choir that harmonizes in the instrumental of this portion sounds super angelic, and the singing parts between the two partners are just filled with so much emotion and hope, further establishing the notion that these two lovebirds can make it out of this mess alive. The song then picks itself back up, constantly switching between the fight with Lord X and BF, and the fight with Mr. L and GF, as they sing the ever-iconic main motif of the original Triple Appear. All four characters, yes, even TooLate.exe, sound incredible here, and this whole part does an excellent job serving as some sort of final stretch for the track that our protagonists have to overcome. Except there's one problem. You might have noticed that I said Lord X and BF. Yeah, for some unknown reason, MX doesn't sing once during this part. Matter of fact, he doesn't even utter a single vowel after that first minute into the song. Ignoring the fact that this makes no sense whatsoever, it really is a shame that he doesn't get more chances to sing because he easily has my favorite chromatic of the three opponents. Anyway, the song then has one last segment with Mr. L and GF, which is just a repeat of the first section with these two characters, which means TooLate.exe goes back to not sounding so good. And then the track just ends. Like, yeah, there's that reference to the Among Us track remix that plays in the instrumental afterwards, but other than that one funny inclusion, that's the end to Triple Appear Good. Yeah, even though I do like this track and think it's a massive upgrade from the original Triple Appear, I have very conflicting feelings about it, which made it unable to get any higher on this list. Honestly, I can't even tell if this song is unfinished or not. If this really is the full extent of the track that we were supposed to get had version 2 been completed, then a lot of these issues I mentioned should not even remotely exist. And if it is incomplete, then yeah, that explains why these problems are here. However, I have no choice then but to put this song as low as I did. So yeah, overall, I think Triple Appear Good is, well, a good song, but it definitely has its flaws that I simply cannot ignore, no matter how much I may like it. finally made it into the top 10, and starting off the final stretch of this ranking is Hater. This song is the definition of fun, and you cannot tell me otherwise. I like how compared to other I Hate You Luigi songs that the FNF community has made, this one doesn't take itself too seriously, but it still has plenty of intensity. It perfectly reflects the concept of I Hate You Luigi as a whole, where it took cliches and elements of other more serious creepypastas, but at the end of the day, the character and original story was always meant to be nothing more than a joke horror brew. The melodies are utterly fantastic, being extremely catchy and bouncy, and containing tons of energy. The instrumental also carries the same amount of vigor and adrenaline, and I absolutely adore how you can hear Megalovania being subtly played underneath. The way the song's liveliness dies down then immediately builds back up halfway into the track just creates so much hype that I can't help but smile every time I hear it. I also just love how BF will sometimes tag along whenever Luigi is in the middle of singing a certain motif. It gives these singing parts so much more of a satisfying impact. While yeah, this isn't my favorite chromatic for I Hate You Luigi, and the scratchiness of it does take some time to get used to, I think this song in particular utilizes it flawlessly, to the point where I don't think it hinders the melodies that much. But yeah, this track is an absolute blast, and those that say otherwise are just a bunch of haters.
Can I get you anything?
Water would be nice.
I'm going to be 100% honest here. Dry was the first song that I really liked when I checked this update out for the first time, and it was what made me realize that this mod actually had some bangers this time around. Starting with the normal Luigi portion, I like how it wastes no time in having very catchy melodies, and that enjoyment I was already getting from the song was further cemented with how much I adore Luigi's chromatic. It doesn't necessarily fit the voice for Hotel Mario's version of Luigi, but it fits well with the eerie, uncertain tone that the track is clearly going for. I especially love the small detail of how the second turn has both the melodies and instrumental get a bit more intense as it builds up to the reveal of Luigi becoming dehydrated. His chromatic in the second phase is also really good here as well, having enough impact during each of his singing parts, but still retains a level of raspiness to imitate him having a dry throat. I also appreciate the fact that the melodies accommodate for these vocals by not giving him super fast rhythms that would have made his turns end up sounding like noise, something that Destroy the World fails to do. Similarly to the first phase, I really like how the motifs and the instrumental constantly build more and more tension as the timer for when Dry Luigi is about to jump scare you begins to count down, creating this sense of unease as you don't know what is going to happen. Now, there are two issues I have with the song. For one, the compression. I'm not one to really complain about big crushed vocals, unless they soften the impact of a track's melodies, but in Dry, BF sounds a bit too compressed, to a point where it's kind of annoying. It's not too bad, especially during the second phase, but I can definitely live without it. Also, this song is too short. It's under 2 minutes and it definitely should have been extended a bit, especially since the first phase is only 2 turns long. But yeah, this is a great song that deserves a lot more attention, even if I do still think there are some better tracks in this mod's OST.
Oh my god, Bo.
In a sharp contrast to Terrifying, where it was the main weak song that took the longest for me to like out of the 3, Chasing was the one that took the shortest amount of time for me to consider as one of my favorites. Everything about this track just works wonderfully. This is another instance where the MX chromatic is implemented super well, and dare I say, the best in all of his songs. I like how his iconic "Innocence doesn't get you far" line at the beginning is spoken in a way that matches up with the beat of the track. I also just love how BF sounds in this song. It not only fits well with the chiptune nature of the instrumental and the structure of the melodies, but for some reason his voice reminds me a lot of those sound effects from Luigi's Mansion, which makes me adore it all the more. The instrumental is immensely satisfying to listen to as well. Not only is the chiptune really good, but it also has a bit of a somber boss battle feel that perfectly fits a pixelated song featuring MX. and that is further enforced by the subtle reference to the Super Mario World Castle theme, which is one of my favorite tracks from that game. But the melodies are what steal the show for me. They are a genuine earworm. Every single turn is so full of life and is super bouncy, and I can't resist bopping my head to all of them. And the keychains near the end takes everything I already loved about the track and cranks that enjoyment factor up to 11, serving as a fantastic way to cap off this amazing song. It is indeed a shame that Chasing is so slept on, because this is easily one of the best solo MX songs of this mod. Well, along with the next entry on this list.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Sudden Run should have been the final song of MX's main week, and there is nothing you could say that would make me change my mind. This is one of the longer tracks in the mod with a lot going on, so I'll just go in order of the sections. MX once again sounds really good throughout this whole song, especially during the starting phase. Speaking of which, this intro is perfect. It doesn't drag itself out for too long, and it serves as a nice calm prelude before the main event of the song happens. I also like the subtle use of N64 sound fonts in the instrumental to further enforce that tranquil tone of this part. Honestly, the instruments really do shine during the more mellow parts of the track. Then there's the main portion of the song, the running section. All of the melodies become very energetic and frantic, perfectly encapsulating that idea of being chased by a monster like MX. Speaking of whom, despite this part of the song having faster melodies, he once again sounds excellent here, and all of his turns don't become white noise. Yet another reason why this should have been the final song of the week and not Destroy the World. The chasing reference during this part was a perfect inclusion, for obvious reasons. But then comes the segment of the song where the perspective changes, and oh my lord is this part amazing! The track switches up to a more swing-like style, which is absolutely incredible because, for those that don't know, I love swing! This style of music is the epitome of bouncy energy, which I am super addicted to, and, if done right, gives me so much life and vitality that I can't help but dance to it. So yeah, if you can't already tell, this is my favorite part of the song. It's a shame that it's just so short. Afterwards is another short running section, this one being much calmer, which is a great opportunity to allow the song's energy to settle down for a bit. Again, the instrumental is super serene during this part, and the sound fonts of various Mario games just add to the overall beautiful vibe that this segment is going for. And then you have this section where BF is looking down at the big gap in the level. I'm not sure what is supposed to be happening here visually, whether it's supposed to depict BF being cornered or MX having fallen into the abyss like in the original PC port, but either way, I love this part musically. I appreciate the more somber mood and how suspenseful it is, like you don't know what's going to happen next. That synth that plays in the instrumental along with the Megalovania sound font is surprisingly really satisfying to listen to. And then you have the final section. The way the N64 styled instruments fade in as MX says his iconic "innocence doesn't get you far" line is super cool. This last running segment is incredible, perfectly serving as this one final stretch that is between you and the end of the song, taking everything I loved about the first running phase and making it all the better. Minus the visuals. The fact that Sudden Run was going to be unused in this mod is an absolute crime and a half. This track takes so many elements involving MX and mixes them all together, creating an absolutely stellar and almost climactic song with this ancient monster. Well, there is one aspect about MX's character that doesn't get implemented in Sudden Run. But don't worry, there is another song in this mod that does fill in that specific quota, and we'll be getting to that track soon enough.
This is getting out of hand.
Now there are two of them.
Double Appear, the finale song of this mod. Or, at least that's what I think it's supposed to be, considering how it shows that thank you art at the end of this track. Anyway, this is another long song with multiple characters, so you know what that means. Better get a second bag of popcorn because I have much to say here. For starters, let me get the elephant in the room out of the way first. MX's chromatic. It's the one that was used back in version 1. While yeah, I don't like this chromatic and I very much prefer the newer vocals that he uses in all of his other songs, I can't deny that it does sound good here. I think what helps is that the melodies aren't super fast to where his singing parts would sound like a garbled mess like in the original Triple Appear. Speaking of which, I like the motifs here. There's a lot of variety to them within this track, with some of them being catchy enough to prompt me to bounce my head to the beat of the song. I also thought the Unknown Suffering reference during this first section was a nice little inclusion as well. The instrumental throughout this song is easily my favorite aspect of this track. Like Find Me, this one has a lot of variety to it. You have rock, orchestral, and synth instruments, a choir vocalizing in the background, and even several Mario sound effects, all working together to create this feeling that you are really in the fight of your life. And then comes the first section with Mr. L and GF, where everything about the song just gets even better. This whole part sounds like an altered version of the previous portion with MX, which ends up making it sound even more like a serious and climactic duel between these two characters, who are both giving it their absolute all, as depicted by both the melodies and their chromatics. Speaking of the latter, GF once again has her regular chromatic for this mod, and this song is up there as one of my favorite usages of her vocals. Meanwhile, Mr. L sounds incredible. This chromatic for him works so much better than the one he uses for all of his other songs. It's nowhere near as scratchy, and it actually allows him to sing faster melodies. While technically this isn't my favorite song involving the man in green in this mod, this is easily the best implementation of him in this entire soundtrack, hands down. The next portion of this song after this amazing part basically consists of the track constantly alternating between the MX and BF fight and the Mr. L and GF battle, where one character sings the primary melody while the other acts as the backing chorus. Some of these turns do an excellent job of building up energy before segues into the main motif of Double Appear, making any time that it shows up all the more satisfying to listen to. There's even a moment where the character sings these melodies that are purposely spaced out to drum up suspense before the main chorus becomes back in full throttle, and in my opinion, it pays off quite well. It really does feel like you are reaching the ultimate climax of the song, and soon enough, that's what happens. Near the end of the track, both MX and Mr. L straight up sing actual lyrics. And yeah, while they're not the craziest set of lyrics to be heard in an FNF song, I still get a lot of enjoyment from them. I like how both BF and GF are singing the main chorus one last time during this part, practically serving as this one final push from the protagonist as they try to come out on top of this difficult strife, while MX and Mr. L are basically taunting them and saying they are ultimately going to fail. It's a fantastic closure that perfectly wraps up the song, expertly making the main motif that was being built up during the track's entire duration have a full payoff. Now, after all the positive stuff I said about Double Appear, I do have one very big problem with it: the length. Under no circumstances should this song have been almost 7 minutes. Even though the melodies are great, a lot of them tend to drag on for way too long, and end up feeling way too repetitive. If some of these portions were shaved down a bit, that would make the track's theme of being this super climactic final fight feel a lot more genuine and warranted. Well, regardless, even with its poor pacing, this is still a great song with so much to love about it. It may not be top 5 material for this mod, but it sure got close. Real close. But hey, that should tell you just how amazing these last couple songs truly are. So without further ado, it's time to finally get into the real breadwinners of this mod. In my opinion, of course. Remember when I said dry was when I realized that this mod actually had songs that I would end up loving? Well, Other Side immediately cemented that notion. While I don't normally watch Luigi Kid, seeing him appear in this mod was still a fun surprise nonetheless, and the fact that his song ended up being this good made it all the more worthwhile. The moment this opening started up, I knew I was in for a treat, and boy, I sure was. I'm a big fan of deep and guttural sounding chromatics, so LuigiKid.exe's vocals were right up my alley. They allow the melodies to hit with so much force and really stick into my mind. I also just adore Luigi Kid's more goofy chromatic. Not only does it fit him really well, but him being able to hit those higher pitched notes serve as a great contrast to his doppelganger's deeper singing parts, giving the overall track a great amount of range to work with. The instrumental is serviceable. It's nothing too amazing, plus it also incorporates amen breaks, and you all know how I feel about those. Anyway, the absolute best aspect about this song are the melodies. All of the main motifs have this great balance between both intensity and energy, giving off this theme of this being a really fierce fight between these two characters. And even without this tone, each of the singing parts are just an absolute banger that hit as hard as a semi-truck. But then we have that one moment with the airplanes in the night sky meme. Yeah, it comes out of nowhere and is both a tone and pace killer, but I'm sorry, I can't help but love how stupid it is. What's more, I do vibe with the melodies that play during this portion, even if it only lasts for one whole turn before going back to normal. The song then repeats several of the motifs from the beginning section of the track, and to be honest, as much as I like these singing parts, I feel like some of them could have been removed entirely, especially since Other Side is almost 5 minutes long. But then comes the best part of the track. Both Luigi Kids start duetting with each other, and as this happens, the instrumental, you know, the thing about the song that I didn't care about before, now suddenly chimes in with this super satisfying combination of a bass, some other string instruments, and this really catchy chiptune. The hype of the track starts to climb and climb, building up so much suspense, and then, with a small laugh from LuigiKid.exe, comes this absolutely glorious beat drop where both characters just go completely in, to a point where I can't help but dance in my seat whenever I hear it. See, this is how you properly do a pop-off after a tense build-up, where all that pent-up energy can finally let loose without the song trying to abruptly stop it like it meant to sigh. It is a perfect climax that works well as a phenomenal closer to an already fantastic track. And given just how many other songs in this mod have really mediocre endings, I'll gladly take as many of the good ones as I can get.
You are death, I am death, you are the Grim Reaper, and you are too. Is there any other Grim Reaper I don't know about? I have come for your soul, Puss in Boots.
Plumber Panic. Oh, now this is a fun one. Ever since I found out that this collab was going to be a thing, I was really excited to see the end result. And let me just say, it did not disappoint. Starting with the melodies, they are a huge bop. A lot of the slower rhythms are quite strong in terms of their quality, but the faster motifs are incredibly addicting to listen to, and are the true MVPs in terms of the singing parts in this track. The inclusion of the power down motif is also very much appreciated, especially since I'm a big reference guy and I do like that song, but more on that later when I get around to ranking that mod. The instrumental is also very impressive as well. I love the inclusion of things like jazz instruments and the return of that amazing bass, allowing the song to have a very chill vibe. But then it adds in more rock-like elements and even a choir, giving the track a lot more menace and intensity, perfectly encapsulating the idea that, no matter how wholesome this concept may be, at the end of the day, this is still MX we're dealing with. Speaking of whom, it's now time to talk about all three of them and their chromatics. I'm gonna be honest, as much as I love them in this song, and while they overall sound quite good, they each have their own set of problems that keep them from being perfect. Mario's Madness MX really only sounds the best whenever he has to sing some form of long notes. Any sort of shorter or quicker rhythms he has to sing don't quite hit as hard. Then there's Monday Night Massacre MX, who has the inverse problem. Despite being my favorite of the three in this song, his most outstanding moments are whenever he sings any motif that is composed of short notes, whereas any melody that includes slides or long notes aren't as good. Then there's FNF Port MX. This is easily one of the weaker usages of him. It's not as bad as Destroy the World, thankfully, but he ends up singing a lot more low notes, which means his chromatic scale isn't being used to a fuller extent, and that also leads to him being smothered by either one of the two MXs anytime he sings together with them. All in all, this is still a fantastic song with very few problems, and even the issues that I do have with the track aren't outright ruining it for me.
Three is the magic number!
Before we get into the top 3, I want to briefly talk about something. Like I mentioned in the intro to this video, the polls for FNF Port really were something else, to say the least. What I thought was going to be a fun set of polls, especially since it was the first time I was doing them for a rather bigger mod, ended up being something that kept bewildering me whenever I decided to look at the results. Don't get me wrong, everyone is entitled to their opinions, but on the other hand, can you really blame me? I mean, after all, my reactions are all based on my own personal thoughts on these songs. And trust me, it was really hard for me not to say anything when these polls have been nothing but the epitome of, we're so back, it's so over, we're so back, it's so over, it can't get any more over than this, like what the fuck, it's so over but not as much, I guess, we're so back but it's not like it could really be over anyway, and it's so over but it's also so over in a way I never thought could be possible. But in all honesty, I think the most egregious part about these round 1 results wasn't when Find Me moved on to the next round, or Weeka Blast almost having more votes than Sudden Run. No, I think the thing that bugged me the most was just how terrible Hellish Trinity performed. Look, I can understand it losing to Menticide because that one is a very popular song, but it doing worse than Triple appeared good? Even though Hellish Trinity is just that song but without all the really blatant issues? Why? Like, I seriously want someone to explain this to me, because I really don't get it. Anyways, you're probably wondering why I love this song so much. Well, hope you got some dessert, because we're gonna be here for a while as I talk about the final super long multi-character song in this mod. First off, I want to talk about the instrumental. It is perfection! Everyone talks about the heavy metal styled instruments in Menticide, but the ones in Hellish Trinity make those look like child's play. The super fast drums, that electric guitar that just goes all in during the track's most chaotic moments, the choir bells that constantly ring as the main motif plays, that haunting choir that you can hear harmonizing throughout most of the song. It is all just so good! It oozes of this menacing and dreadful tone, fitting in perfectly for what was meant to be the bad ending song of the mod. And this is even reinforced by the chromatics. All of the opponent's vocals, especially MX's, give the melody such a strong impact, and combined with the track's tempo, makes all the singing parts practically oppressive by nature, establishing this idea that you are doomed from the start and are fresh out of luck. And this is all in just the first minute of the song. Moving on to the Mr. L segment, that intensity and feeling of terror from the previous section is still prevalent here, and GF's chromatic really does highlight the serious weight that this fight brings, especially whenever she sings any sort of high notes. Now granted, I did say that Mr. L's chromatic from Your Dear Brother isn't really compatible with singing really fast melodies, and that is a problem that's still noticeable here. However, it's not too bad, plus at least he's nowhere near as rough to listen to as he is in Triple Appear Good. Moving on to the next section where we return to MX and BF, the song is now a lot more calm than the last two parts, but soon enough, the track starts to pick back up its speed, building up more and more suspense, clearly leading to something big, and then Lord X shows up and immediately starts singing lyrics, which also happen to be taken from an actual song called To the Hellfire. That's cool! I honestly find that to be really creative and intuitive to be able to take something from an entirely different song and implement it into something like this. Anyway, Lord X begins to sing with his iconic chromatic from Versus Sonic.exe, which sounds great here, and there is even a Fate reference in this part, which is another nice detail. Afterwards, Hellish Trinity does its own take on the BF and GF section. The way BF sounds in this part conveys this feeling of demoralization, as if things are starting to seem bleak for him. But in that moment, GF chimes in, and suddenly the whole song takes on a more hopeful tone, as if BF is ready to continue this fight and is now planning on seeing it through to the end. The track's tone does eventually revert back to how it originally was, a representation which shows that even if BF has a newfound source of motivation, the threats that stand before him have no intention on backing down yet. The main motif of the song then plays one last time, during both MX's and Mr. L's turns, before it goes back to BF and Lord X where they sing that ever-iconic Cycles motif, right before that super big pop-off of all 5 characters, serving us as one final push that expertly closes out this climactic track. To say Hellish Trinity is underrated would be a huge understatement. I simply cannot comprehend why this one doesn't get any of the adoration that it rightfully deserves. While sure, it may have its problems, there's no denying how much of a masterpiece this is compared to the other long songs in this mod. And to think, this is only number 3.
Oh my god, it's Super Mario! Super Mario, bro! Hey, Super Mario! Oh my god, man!
Oh, I can already see the comments now. Oh, why is Not So Innocent so high? How is this one of your favorites? Not So Innocent sucks. Why do you like it so much? Because it's a good song, damn it! This is not only my favorite MX-related track of this mod, but this is easily my favorite usage of his 2 other forms in all of FNF. Starting with the best section of the song, the melodies during the false hero phase are a total and utter banger. They are extremely addicting to listen to, and that beginning with the iconic 1-1 motif before it segues into this very chill and laid back portion where the instrumental perfectly replicates the style of official Mario games is not only super satisfying, but establishes that uncanny tone, stating that something clearly isn't right. MX sounds wonderful in this part. I like the subtle detail of how it's similar to other Mario chromatics in this mod, but it's still different enough from those other sets of vocals, reinforcing that notion that this might not be the plumber you know and love. Then there's the pipe crawler phase. While it's easily the weakest part of the song due to the super scratchy chromatic, I love how the melodies now become much more frantic and intense, as if the song itself is trying to process what is going on. And that one turn where everything goes silent and you can hear that heartbeat in the instrumental just drums up so much eeriness and suspense that I can't help but smile when that build-up is paid off thanks to the final phase with MX's true form. This last part is essentially a reprisal of the first turn during his pipe crawler form, but his chromatic here is definitely miles better than the one in the previous section. I also like how this phase only lasts for one turn. It allows MX to have a proper introduction into the mod, but it still gives the other songs of the main week a chance to truly shine. In other words, this song essentially acts as a taste for what is to come, and I am all for it. I do not care what the haters have to say for this one. Not So Innocent is a fantastic opener that perfectly utilizes one of the bigger core aspects of MX's character, all while being an absolute earworm. Let's be real here, you all should have seen this one coming a mile away, or at the very least expected to see Pyromania end up ranking high on this list. Remember how much I liked the direction they took with Hater? Well, apply that same tone to a different track, give it even better chromatics, even catchier melodies, and an instrumental that I can absolutely groove to, and you get this. I'm so glad this song decided to take an unserious approach, because not only does it make the track so much more of a blast to listen to, but let's be honest, no one was taking Cool Rash's Mario.exe seriously. But even when the song decides to have a more intense moment, it still ends up sounding incredible, like during that one slow section where everything lights up on fire and Mario is laughing to the beat of the song. It serves as this great reminder that despite how fun this song may be, Mario.exe is still someone that should not be trifled with. Speaking of whom, I really like his chromatic, being really deep in its pitch, which is a great contrast to Millie's voice and allows the melodies to hit super hard and resonate a lot more effectively. The effect on his voice does a great job making him sound demonic, and subtly sells this malicious undertone in all of his singing parts. As for Millie, while it's a little odd that she uses the regular GF's chromatic, her vocals do an excellent job carrying this high-octane energy throughout every single one of her turns. The melodies in this song are the epitome of a headbanger, and every single turn just ends up being a complete and total earworm. That faker portion near the beginning of the song just oozes of charm and pure untempered fun, and even Mario.exe sounds heavenly during this part. And the inclusion of that one motif from Eggman's section in Triple Trouble is a fantastic reference that I love to death. I also find it really satisfying how some of the turns involve one character singing the main melody while the other will chime in afterwards, resulting in the two to duet part of that primary motif together, thus making the main chorus hit so much harder. All in all, Pyromania offers so much flavor and variety, being nothing but a hype-inducing track the whole way through, never once letting up at any given moment, while also having this fantastic balance between two different tones without it ever feeling like it clashes. Unlike the other songs in this mod that have at least one minor issue about them, I can't think of a single thing to complain about in this track. And if that isn't enough to prove to you that this deserves the top spot on this list, I don't know what will. And so that was Mario FNF Port version 2. Yeah, this mod is a pretty mixed bag for me. While I did find myself really enjoying a good number of tracks from this OST, I still can't deny that this soundtrack has some incredibly rough moments. Like, there were some songs that had plenty of promise to them, but then there were those that, to put it bluntly, were outright pathetic in terms of their execution. I mean, just take a look at the tier list. Not gonna lie, it's kinda shameful seeing so many of these songs ending up in the lower tiers. You would think a mod like this would have more consistency in its quality, but it really doesn't. Oh, and before I move on, I should quickly mention this. This is technically not my definitive tier list for this mod. I have yet to rank my favorite songs of this OST on my big FNF ranking list, which is the one that I use for my top 100s videos, so their placement here in this ranking are subject to change. That being said, if some of these songs do end up switching spots by the time I finish ranking them for the top 500, I'll probably do a second video for this mod that would then have my updated thoughts and opinions on some of these tracks. I'll most likely make it whenever I decide to remaster my Inferno Bout ranking. If the placement of the songs remain the same, but they end up moving up or down a tier, then I won't make a video, I'll just make a community post with the updated tier list for you guys to see what changed. And if neither of those two things happens, and I don't say anything else about FNF Port by the time the top 500 comes out, then just know that probably means my thoughts on these songs have not changed, and this is actually my definitive tier list for this mod. Well, only time will tell if this video will become outdated or not. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching this monster of a ranking video. I really do hope you all enjoyed it, cause trust me, it was not an easy one to make. Between me losing power in my apartment twice, my video downloader temporarily not working, college being a constant thorn in my side, and just how massive this mod's OST is, yeah, this video and the next one had a lot of rough moments during their productions. Speaking of which, I think the time has come for me to talk about a certain mod I know you all have been waiting for. See you guys around for the next event for Mario's March Madness.